Okay, so now we're looking at the formal letter pattern. Okay, so let's look at the topic. You recently attended a meeting at a hotel. When you returned home, you left some important papers at the hotel. Oh no, write a letter to the manager of the hotel in your letter. Where do you left the papers? Why they're so important? Tell the manager what you want him or her to do. Okay, so again, formality. Okay, so this is a really tricky thing for candidates taking this style of the IELTS test. How is it formal and how do we know if it's informal? Okay, in Korean, in Japanese, in other languages, it's very clear and easy to make the distinction between being formal and being informal. Okay, I know in Japanese it's called keigo. They have a totally separate words, a different level of vocabulary to use to be super formal. You contract the verbs differently depending on your level of formality. And I imagine it's similar in Korean. We don't have that in English, and that can make it difficult for candidates to learn about tone. Okay, so if you're being formal, okay, formal consists of two things. Okay, so one I've already said before, the tone. Okay, how you say something. Second part, content, what you are talking about. Okay, so in terms of tone, I mean, it's stuff like this is where stuff that's easier to learn comes in. This is your vocabulary. Okay, this is your grammar. Okay, this is your punctuation. It's not formal to use emojis. It's not formal to use dashes, exclamation marks. Okay, in formal writing, you should be using full stops, commas, apostrophes. You can use a question mark, and you might use brackets sometimes depending on what you're saying. Okay, but dashes tend to be informal, brackets tend to be more formal. Okay, content, what are you actually talking about, and is what you're talking about relevant and suitable for the kind of person you're talking to? Some of it is cultural, some of it is not. One example I can think of is that when I was living in Japan, the number of people who would just tell me straight up, like, oh, I have diarrhea today, so I need to go to the hospital. I'd be like, what? It's too personal. Why are you sharing that with me? In the UK, you would just say you're going to the hospital. You would never, never, never tell someone exactly what's wrong with you because it's much too personal unless they're your immediate family member or they ask you specifically. But when I was working with my Japanese coworkers, that was totally normal to them. That wasn't rude at all, or it wasn't inappropriate for them to say specifically what they were going to the hospital for. So they might, tell me something like, oh, I ate really spicy food yesterday and I have diarrhea, so I must go to the doctor. Would it be possible for you to cover my class today? So even though the tone of what they're saying is polite, they're using polite vocabulary, they're using polite grammar, they're, asking me a question politely, but the content, like what they're actually telling me, is informal. And so that made me uncomfortable to listen to. So that's the tricky thing about learning English, is it's a little bit more difficult like that. And it's also depending a little bit on culture. There's a difference between America and the UK. For example, in America, it's quite okay to talk about money, how much money you earn, your salary. Asking people how much money you earn is okay to do in America. In Britain, in the UK, it's so, so rude to talk about your salary. To ask someone how much money do you make is one of the rudest questions you can ask someone. It's just embarrassing. Like, of course, maybe some people in the UK are okay with it, but the majority of people are not. Nobody I know would ever ask me how much money I earn. It's a very uncomfortable topic for us. So this is how we talk about formality in terms of content. Okay, so even if you were writing a letter to someone and your vocabulary, grammar, and punctuation were all formal, for example, if you then ask them the question, would it be possible for you to tell me how much money you earn? The content of that question is still rude because it's not something that's done in a cultural context. So that's the kind of more difficult thing for students and for candidates to learn how to do. And that's something that you can practice. That's something I encourage my students to practice. And it's something that you get the best feedback on from a native teacher, because they can give you that kind of cultural context that's specific for what's polite and what's rude. Okay? So let's take a look at what this candidate has done. Dear Sir and Madam, I'm writing this letter with regard to some papers. This letter, it should be regarding some papers that I have left in your hotel lobby. 2 days ago, I had a meeting with a publisher who was interested in a book that I have written. The meeting took place at the hotel coffee shop near the main entrance. After the meeting, I met an acquaintance at the lobby and we started a conversation. I absentmindedly put my papers down on a red velvet stool next to me. and forgot about it. I realized I didn't have the papers with me after I arrived home. The papers are of much value to me since they contain the first draft of my book. Oh no. Like, as I read that, I got secondhand anxiety. Oh, he's lost his book. Oh no. I shudder at the thought of losing it and hope to retrieve it. Okay. Now, just bearing in mind that what I just talked about in terms of content and tone, what do you think I'm going to say about this first paragraph? Say it with me. I'm like, it's too personal. To me, this is similar to the thing about talking about going to the hospital. He's sharing too much personal information to make me comfortable, okay? You're writing to the manager of the hotel, okay? You don't know this person. You're asking this person for a favor, okay? You're asking them to help you out and look for the papers that you've lost. For example, this of 2 days ago, I met with a publisher who's interested in a book I have written, okay? This is not necessary. This is not necessary information, okay? In a real letter to a hotel manager, you wouldn't need to say that. It's enough to just say 2 days ago, I had a meeting at the hotel coffee shop near the main entrance, okay? At your hotel's coffee shop. After the meeting, I met an acquaintance in the lobby and he said, this is, again, I don't need to know that. This is too personal. This is giving me too much information about your life, okay? As I'm reading it, I'm thinking, like, why do I care? Okay, just get to the facts, okay? And then you would want to say, like, this is okay to say, I absentmindedly left my papers on a red velvet stool, on a red velvet stool at the coffee shop. Next to me and forgot about them papers. I realized I didn't have the papers with me after I arrived home, and the papers are much value to me since they contain the first draft of my book. Okay, I think this is okay to say because you're explaining why they're so valuable, and that's like what the question asked you to do. I think this is okay because it's you're kind of trying to explain what type of papers they are. So I think that's okay for them to say, but the whole thing about meeting with a publisher is it's irrelevant to the story, You want them to look for your papers. It doesn't matter why you had the meeting. I shudder at the thought of losing it and hope to retrieve it. It's like if I was really the manager and I read this sentence, it would make me smile because I shudder at the thought is a very like poetic kind of phrase or way to say it. Like it makes me feel like I'm reading a novel. But I mean, okay, I think it just gives the impression that you're a slightly eccentric or slightly odd, strange person. So that's kind of sweet. So yeah, in terms of grammar, pretty good. In terms of vocabulary, nice. They're obviously trying to use these more obscure terms and stuff. It's just that the content is slightly too personal. And I totally understand when you're writing these letters, sometimes it's so difficult to come up with a situation or use your imagination to explain why. You've got to write 150 words. You're trying to write something. And so you come up with these elaborate stories. I understand why the temptation is there to do these kind of details. And what would be more appropriate is to say things like give a specified date. Date and time. That's much more formal than 2 days ago. On the 2 days ago, on March 8th at around 11 a.m., I had a meeting at your hotel's coffee shop near the main entrance. After the meeting, I absentmindedly left some very important papers of mine on a red velvet stool at the entrance to the coffee shop. After I arrived home, I realized I didn't have the papers with me. The papers are very valuable to me since they contain the first draft of my book and can be identified by the red leather cover around them or something like that. They're a really important set of papers to me. I would really appreciate if you would be able to help me find them, something like that. I'd be grateful if you could find the papers and hold on to them. Okay, hold on to them. This is a nice phrase, sort of quite natural. They are in a see-through plastic folder with a title page at the front. I look forward to hearing from you, Anna. Okay, so I would be grateful if, so this is quite polite, I'd be grateful if you could find the papers and hold on to them. But I look forward to hearing from you, Anna. You can expand here. I look forward to hearing from you, if it's possible, to locate them. I would appreciate it if you could contact me either by email or by phone using this number, and then give your number. Okay. So that was another way to sort of to practice like expanding your letter and making it longer. So overall, I'm thinking task achievement, pretty good. They explained the situation. They gave identifying details. They asked them to look for it. They could have done a little bit more detail about exactly what they want them to do if they can find the papers. So I think task achievement was pretty good. Coherence and cohesion. Yeah, I want to give a sort of quite a strong message. Even though the content of what they were talking about was slightly inappropriate, I can understand that I'm being quite picky about it. To get to those much higher levels, you would need to have much more an awareness of content, like that. But for what this candidate, for the sort of 6.5 level, I think what this candidate did was great. Vocabulary, I thought was pretty good. I want to give a 6.5, and the same for the grammar. I thought the grammar was very good and consistent. So definitely an overall 6.5 for me. Yeah, and I thought this candidate, I would just want them to go and sit down and talk to a native speaker a little bit more about exactly how to write a formal letter in terms of content.